Welcome to News with a View. As I get my other headphone off here. All right. News with a View, hosted by me, John A. Costa. Today is January 31st. Breezing through this time, aren't we? 2026. This is going to be episode either 20 or 21. I got them kind of mixed up because I had to do some edits. Today's episode. It's a doozy, folks. It's a doozy. The Democrats are just giving so much room for conservative commentators like myself, or as Bob calls me, an echo chamber for the right, which I like that. I like that. Bob, in New York, stay warm. It's really cold there, but I'm sure with the antifreeze you're drinking, you're doing just fine. All right. Kathy Griffin. You remember Kathy Griffin? She shaved her head and she shaved her head off, a shade of her hair off, and then went nuts. But she did shave her hair off in support of her sister who was dying of cancer. So, all right. But she's always made weird comments and, I mean, just hates Trump. We get that when you hate Trump. But she is now a racist, a Nazi, and a fascist, as she tells her followers to find out who is a MAGA in your neighborhood so plans can be made to take some sort of action against them. Now, Kathy, what did you have in mind when we identify these people, MAGA? What do you suggest? Maybe a symbol of an elephant with an M on it? And then what's next? Don't go to their stores. Don't support them. And if you go into their stores, we're going to then hunt you down too. You don't see a problem with what you're saying, Kathy. And those people that support her with freedom of speech, yeah, you can do that. But she is openly saying that because of a person's political affiliation, they need to be watched and taken care of. And some form of community action taken against them, or to thwart them, or to prevent them, or to impede them. Do you know how dangerous that language is? And it's just, I can't think of a worse thing for the Democrats than what she is suggesting being done. You spy on your neighbors. Go find out if they have a Trump, if they put a Trump sign out, or they're a Republican. These are very, very dangerous comments that she made. And I think the Democrats really, I mean, if you're a moderate Democrat, you should really take Kathy to the side and go, don't speak for us. Come out and say you're a socialist communist or something. Come out and say you're a Nazi. Come out and say you're a fascist. But don't include us. You know, that we must do something about these people. Very, very dangerous rhetoric. And I think even Bob in New York would agree with that. That pointing out someone's political selection and then saying we have to take action against them or measures or is a very dangerous path to start to follow. Now, you can be a liberal, you can be a progressive. As long as you don't break the law, have at it. Have at it. And I've said that before on my podcast. The Constitution protects us all. But we don't have a religious test, nor do we have a political test. We don't do that. Now, we could say, hey, being a communist is bad, and being a Nazi is bad, and being this is bad, and being a Republican is bad, and being a Democrat is bad. You can do that. And list your reasons why. I mean, people look at you and go, whatever. But to say, to take action against them and to identify them, to call them out to it, well, how do you plan on doing that? And what is the ultimate agenda? You're going to shame them? This is the problem with the Democrats. And this is where they used, you're a racist, you're a homophobe, you're an Islamic phobe, you're this. They want to paint you so that you're just, hey, I don't want to have to defend something that's I can't defend because it doesn't exist. And you want me fighting a windmill. Very, very dangerous. And this shows the sheer panic of the left, of the Democrats. It is just outlandish. And for her to do this, and I realize there's crazies on both sides. You know, they're extremists on both sides is why they're called extremists. But she has a lot of followers. And we've seen what happened when, Kimmel gets on television on a show and he goes, yeah, hey, don't burn any Teslas, don't destroy, Teslas, and we've seen what happens. And that's violence. We've seen what happened with ICE arresting people and the Democrats throwing themselves into a situation and not a peaceful protest. There's nothing wrong with peacefully protesting ICE. There's nothing wrong with that. I support the people's rights, of course, to protest. That's what it's all about. Without the fear of retribution from the government or people. So the idea that Kathy Griffith says we must identify them and call them out and make plans. We've seen that. And this Kathy Griffith had the nerve to call President Trump a Nazi. It's exactly what the Nazis did. Exactly what the fascists do. Telling people that you must go after a certain group of people. You're not outraged by this? Bob in New York. It is something to be outraged about. And you could have your political differences, and you could say, hey, I don't support the Democrats because of this. I don't support the Republicans because of a situation. And that is fine. That is what this country is about. Peaceful. And the Democrats have been nothing but violent. And the rhetoric and gearing up these people of a lower IQ and mental status to do things that harm other people. And we've seen it. We've seen things ratchet up at protests. And we've seen President Trump get shot during his election. We've seen this. Every American feared when Obama got elected that someone didn't do something to him because he was black. And that was a great fear. And you have the left and the Democrats cheering that President Trump during his campaign was shot. And, and tried to justify why violence is against the agenda of the government right now, which is the legal agenda. And there is a process to fight and go to court. And I said before that there are lines that have been crossed by Republicans, by the Trump administration, and they've been pulled back. And I've said in these podcasts before where I thought that, hey, that's going a little bit too far. Because the book expressly says you can't do that. Or you declare an emergency so you could take further action, but you had to show what that emergency is. Now, the border crisis was an emergency. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about that. So I'm fine with the president saying, hey, I'm putting ICE in here, I'm going over here, I'm tightening up the border. There's nothing wrong with that. The executive power of the president is powerful, but it can be checked for validity and appropriateness. So I'm fine with that. Do it through the legal challenges. Don Lemon saying, I'm a journalist, so that allowed me to go into a church and disrupt it because the pastor of that church was an ICE agent. Or the pastor speaking there was an ICE agent. You can't do that. You can't do that. Don Lemon is an idiot. That's why he was fired from CNN. That's why no one hired him. He's not a very intelligent man. And I hope that he's penalized for what he's done. Kathy Griffin is not, in essence, a political figure or a commentator. She's a comedian. But her telling her followers to do what she said for them to do, for the reasons she said to do it, It's dangerous. The district attorney of Philadelphia saying that he will hunt down ICE agents as if they were Nazis. That's dangerous rhetoric. ICE saying we're going to arrest those people who are here illegally is not dangerous. ICE saying we will arrest people who interfere with us during our fulfillment of our duties is not dangerous. That's called the law. Using a vehicle as a weapon attacking and interfering with ICE is a criminal offense. I don't understand why people are getting upset when ICE makes an arrest of an illegal. And I know people say, well, Trump said he was going after the worst of the worst. Okay. But if in the course of my duties as a federal agent or a police officer, I go, I'm hunting for a killer, but now I've caught a shoplifter during the course of my investigation, I should let them go because that's not the killer. Doesn't work that way, folks. And yes, those being detained have a Fourth Amendment right. It gets a little murky when they're here illegally, and that is without a status. It is legal under our immigration laws and policies to even detain a person who has a status and who is not issued yet a green card. It's always been a rarity, but it's not illegal. It's not an illegal detention. So, the idea that you cannot arrest an illegal is ridiculous. Under the civil code, they can. And under the civil code, the government is not required to afford them an attorney unless they pay for it. When I say they, the illegal. And I understand that a lot of times they're pressured into self-deporting or saying, I will deport, I will go, and because there's other, might have been criminal activity that they did that could then land them in jail and then be deported anyway and never having a chance to come back here. Being a nationalized citizen is not a foregone right. You have to apply and go through the process. Now, sometimes the process was easy and sometimes the processes were not easy. Because policies change. And that's the way it goes. But you just can't come here, cross the border, and go, I'm here, now make me a citizen. Doesn't work that way. And I do agree the people that were brought here and given TPS, temporary protection status, and the idea of that became so watered down that you could just say, hey, I fear in my neighborhood because some guy was after me, or I gang violence or something. Okay, boom. And then they're in. That was never the idea of TPS. TPS was when the government said a particular nation is having a major problem, either economically, socially, civilly, or governmental, they could come over here under TPS and then weave their way through the system. And if they don't apply for citizenship in a certain time zone, the TPS will stay until things calm down over there, and then they have to go back. That was the whole idea of TPS. It just wasn't a one-way ticket here, and you're in through the door, and that's it. You're here. The idea of getting your big toe on the shore for the Cubans, for the Haitians, I mean, that was a terrible, terrible policy. You encourage people to risk their lives. How many drowned? How many people died in the desert? How many, with the idea that you just get here and, you're here. That's not immigration. And these caravans of people, that was an invasion. And you have a Kathy Griffin who says, we're going to go after people that we think are MAGA or identify themselves as MAGA. There's nothing wrong with being identified as a MAGA. It's nothing wrong with being identified as a progressive. But to say, we're going to hunt down progressives, and we're going to find out if that person with purple hair over there, or blue hair, or red hair, or no hair, or half hair, we're going to hunt you down. I mean, that's what Kathy Griffin is alluding to. And if the Democrats don't jump on board and go, hey, whoa, that's wrong, she should be so pushed down by their own party, by the Democrats, to go, you don't speak for us, sweetheart. But this is the chaos that's going on inside the Democratic Party. Schumer, in the last week, has shown that he still carries weight. He still carries some weight. And I've said this before, I hate his politics. And he's becoming marginalized and somewhat irrelevant, but he still has a fight in him. And in the past, Schumer was the guy you'd go to, let's work out a deal across the aisle. He was the guy. It wasn't Joe Biden. It was Schumer. All right. The other news of the day, other than this making me nuts, with Kathy Griffin. And you could find out what she said, just YouTube Kathy Griffin wants to expose MAGA. Just Google, and you'll find the whole thing, and you can see what she's talking about. And very dangerous. Very, very very dangerous. All right, good old Carville's at it again. And he was on the news and said, Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, will be the 2028 DNC choice to run against the Republican candidate. I'm watching him and I'm laughing. And I said, the only thing in the past 5 years, or maybe even longer, that this idiot has picked is his nose. Why the news media goes to him to speak for the Democratic Party, or as one of the voices in the Democratic Party. Shapiro is now coming out of the shadows a little bit. Forget Newsom. Newsom never had a chance at it. He can try. He'll never make it. He'll never make it. Pritzker will try, but the Illinois' waste and fraud of taxpayer money is going to seal this guy's fate, as well as the Democrats in the midterm and 2028. And I said every state has fraud. Every state. When there's government money involved, there's going to be fraud. It's to what extent and how did it happen, who knew and who should have known. Those are important things. I think Pritzker is going to be called out on the fraud going on in Illinois. They've already been arrests and indictments, and that is a thumbs up for Merrick Garland and his Department of Justice, who made many of those charges in Minneapolis also, when the fraud was brought to the attention of the Department of Justice, but had been going on for years inside the state, to the point that I think that the Biden administration could no longer take a blind eye towards it. And I think, and I've said this before, I did not like Merrick Garland. I did not think he would make a good Supreme Court justice. But as far as being a attorney general or a judge, I thought he did a good job. I didn't have too much against him, but he was very, very easily persuaded with emotions, and you can make judgments with some emotional impact in there, and that's fine. But he went too far. But I thought, if you look, and for all the screaming people made about the Biden, blah, 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 I said before, and I said it, and I'll say it again, I think that fraud is being brought to light, and should have been brought to light during the election with Walz. They knew it, and they buried it, but it was out there. And I think a lot of the deals were made with the idea, we're going to put this on the low burner over here because we don't want this coming out when the DNC picked Walz to be the vice president, a heartbeat away from the presidency. That was a bad call. But that happens in politics. So I chalk it up to just a bad call. and whitewashing what was going on. And oh my God, you don't think that happens with Trump? You didn't think that happened with Clinton and Obama and Bush and everyone else? Well, that's politics. And we all know how politics are played. But I think Carville saying that, picking Pritzker, I don't think we've seen the Democrat yet. Honestly, I don't think we've seen him. Shapiro has a lot of history that goes contrary to what the Democrats are screaming about, and the Me Too movement, which seems to have faded out, but it will show its ugly head because the Republicans are going to reignite that and use that as a tool. And it's going to be hard for the Democrats to go, that doesn't count for me. Or, I've already explained that. Well, yeah, so has Trump a million times, and you keep bringing it up. So it's fair game. And that's why you have to really be careful in the political arena what you toss out there. Because it will come back and bite them. Just like is happening to Don Lemon. The Democrats wanted to go after hate speech and all this, and, all right, boom. Now he's paying the price for it, running into a church and doing what he's doing. Yeah. Yeah, it sucks. So, and speaking of fraud, a third Georgia Democrat charged with fraud. Dexter Sharper, a member of the Georgia House of Representatives, has been charged with making false statements to fraudulently obtaining thousands of dollars of emergency pandemic unemployment assistance payments. Sharper, who represented District 177, including portions of the Lowndes County, allegedly applied for unemployment unemployment assistance benefits for April 2020 through May 2021, claiming to only have one employer. Dexter Sharper's party rental, which had employed him for 40 hours per week for over 7 years, but had not worked since March 13, 2020. Sharper was working in the Georgia General Assembly in addition to running his party rental and performing as a musician. He was receiving funds from these sources while continuing to claim unemployment benefits. The charges reflect allegations of a disgusting abuse by an elected official who appeared to trade his integrity for money destined for those in need. Quote, the federal authorities. More Democratic fraud of COVID-type assistance. We're going to see more of it as the government looks into how these funds were distributed. This is why the Democrats were all freaking out, and some Republicans, over Doge. Because, all right, this money went this way. These are the people that distributed. Can you show me how you distributed it? Did you do your due diligence in taking these funds and applying these funds to the people that needed it? Now, a lot of these people said, hey, this guy applied. We had 1 million applications, and we found out later on. But they would never have started looking if it wasn't for Doge. It would have just disappeared and fallen off the edge of the earth. Trump is going to look deeper, and Trump is going to look hard, which is his job. And you could say, oh, no, that's political reprisal. Was there a crime involved? It had nothing to do with criminal. It had nothing to do with political. It had to do everything with criminal. Sucks when they use that law against you, huh? Former Representative Karen Bennett resigned from office in the days before she was charged and pleaded guilty to making false statements earlier in January. In December, federal investigators charged Representative Sharon Henderson with 2 counts of theft of government funds and 10 counts of making false statements. Henderson was suspended by Governor Brian Kemp last week. In North Carolina, former Charlotte City Councilwoman Tawana Brown pleads guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Brown and her family allegedly used COVID relief fund money for personal use. And those were, according to news sources, her 2 daughters. And this is just more of the fraud. And if you say, Johnny, what about Republican fraud? Yes, there has been Republican fraud. There have been Republicans that have committed fraud. And if you want to bring that out, Bob in New York, start your own podcast. I know what Bob's going to say. Well, no, you say you're fair. I am fair. I'm saying there has been Republican fraud. There you go. I'm fair, Bob. The other day, I was saying how Soros is funding a lot of these protests and has funded many leftist and socialist, communist district attorneys' political careers. And I said there was a person in China doing that who is an American citizen, billionaire. Congressional investigators are examining whether an American billionaire who now resides in Shanghai is funding anti-ICE protests across the United States. Now, that in itself is not illegal. You could fund legitimate protest groups that are registered or not, as long as they're not deemed to be like a terrorist group or, really just a terrorist group. That is nothing wrong with an American citizen funding those groups. Perfectly okay. What is being investigated is the funding of anti-ICE protests and other protests at the direction of the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP. And the congressional multiple committee letters and subpoenas against Neville Roy Sigam, a billionaire who has reported ties to the CCP. And now he faces scrutiny from the House and Ways and Means Committee, Senate Judiciary Committee, and House Oversight Committees over his alleged efforts to sow discord in America at the behest of the Chinese Communist Party. See, that you can't do, because now you're having political ties to people you shouldn't be doing it with. And part of this I pointed out, I go, how are the signs for these protests all the same throughout the country in a day? Who's doing that? Who's funding it? Well, here we go. It's been pointed to identical protest signs appearing at demonstrations across the country, from Minnesota to Los Angeles to Philadelphia, all bearing Answer Coalition logos with interchangeable messages. So this group, how are they doing this? How is this being funded? Well, it's being funded by an American citizen, which is perfectly legitimate. But if it's being done at the behest of the Chinese Communist Party, then you're acting as an actor with a foreign government. Can't do that. So what these congressional committees are saying, these aren't grassroots protests. They're coordinated, they're orchestrated, and there's a playbook. And this, not only the congressional committees are saying this, but also outside observers who monitor these groups. In a letter to Secretary Bessent, the House Oversight Committee named all three organizations in with connections to Singham's into this Neville Singham. Has been funding and supporting his various extremist entities in the United States with the aim of causing destruction and division in our country under the guidance and direction of the CCP. All right. Now, these are just allegations. Congress subpoenaed Singham last year, and lawmakers had requested that the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, investigate freezing his assets. Now, that's hard to do just on, you got to show me some proof. You got to bring something to me that I can have tangible proof on. The House Ways and Means Committee is examining his tax-exempt status. Now, this guy has tax-exempt status. Now, again, this was last year, so we're looking at this stuff. This is now coming to light under the Trump administration, but had been going on under the Biden administration. While the Senate Judiciary Committee has demanded Foreign Agents Registration Act investigations, and that's when you act for a foreign nation, you must submit and say, I'm acting at the behest of, and helping that government. Obviously, you're not going to say, I'm helping the CCP in disrupting activities inside the United States. So if he has been doing that, and they can prove that through intelligence reporting, then his assets could be frozen. But in the meantime, this guy, I'm sure, has moved money and made it so bulletproof that he'll just move it through a third and fourth and fifth party. But he'll get called out, and they'll say this is an organization that is being funded by the communists, and this will come into light, and it won't mean anything because it won't be able to be stopped. Unless that group is then targeted as a terrorist organization. It's not easy to do. It can be done, but because you have the right to protest here, and you have the right to protest under being a communist or socialist. Just ask Mamdani. It can be done. Going further with the Democrats and fraud. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison set to testify before Congress about massive fraud allegations. Now, this has to scare the bejesus out of these people, because you're going to have to face a John Kennedy, and you're going to have to face people, and you're going to have to face questions, and you must answer them truthfully and knowingly. You can't say, I don't know the answer, when you know the answer and people have told you the answer. Then you're lying, and then, again, bad things can happen to you because you are on the record. When they get to call the governor in and his attorney general, now this is going to happen weeks from now, and these two will be able to kind of get their stories together. But there's going to be a lot of questions asked them that they will have to really, really be careful when they answer it. When the fraud is brought out, that is being brought out in Illinois, in Ohio, in Colorado, in California, in Oregon, in Washington State, in Kentucky, in Florida, in Texas. These people are going to have to answer to that too. And there's going to be questions that are very pointed, that are yes or no type of situations, where if you answer no, and the answer should have been yes, you're going to find yourself in trouble. And they're going to have a very hard time skirting that. And if I was Walsh or Ellison, I'd be very nervous. I would be very, very nervous. Ellison, being a lawyer, might be able to dance around the questions and not, he might be able to say, I answered no to the question because the question you asked was this, and the answer was correctly given as no because you didn't ask the right question that I would have responded yes to. Lawyers love that because words mean everything. Walsh? Oh, dead man walking. Dead man walking. And I would have Ellison on the stand first, or in front of that committee first. And then I'd get Walsh in there, and I'd tangle him up with that words. And he'll just fall apart. He'll just fall apart. Now, Ellison would want to have his story out there first because he will be very precise, and he will know how lawyers ask questions and why they ask questions. And when a lawyer asks you a question, believe me, they already know the answer. They want to hear what you have to say. Now, they'll get Walsh in there first, because Walsh will spill the beans on everything, and it will be hard for Ellison to not have all that mud, as I will call it. We all know what it really will be. He'll be splattered with it. All right, I've been doing this for 50 minutes. And it's a Saturday, and we're in the midst of a I don't know, apocalyptic snowstorm here in South Carolina. I don't know. Yeah, I know here where I am, there's not a sander truck. You know, maybe the county has one or two of them. No plows, no nothing. And so if you get 2 inches of snow, the world comes to an end here, and everyone has to run to the stores and emptied it out. Like this is going to be the blizzard of '88 and 1888, and people will be locked in their homes for weeks. It's going to be 60 degrees during the week, so, or at least 45 to 50. To those viewers who live in states where you will get hit hard, please be careful, be prepared. Bob in New York, stock up on your gin or scotch, which I'm sure you're pretty well stocked up on. And be safe. Again, anyone in the Myrtle Beach area who feels like venturing out possibly tomorrow between the hours of 12 noon and 4 p.m., Socrates Station restaurant in Myrtle Beach. It's really Socrates, but it's considered Myrtle Beach. Look them up. They're having a benefit lunch and spaghetti type of thing, meatballs. I don't know what the donation price is for it. I'm going to say it's $10. And all the proceeds go to the Special Olympics. They were supposed to have a golf outing on Sunday. Yeah, that ain't happening. And so they're going to be redoing that, replanning all that, and refunding monies and hoping people give to help the Special Olympics. And I'm sure they'll have some other event for this. Everyone give to a charity if you can. If you're not comfortable with giving to a charity, please look at food banks locally in your area. They need food. They also need monetary assistance because they could use that monetary assistance to pinpoint exactly what they need in that moment in time. Very important. If you feel like giving to a shelter and you have old clothes that are good and still, but you're never going to wear your 14 suits again, give it to them. Pants, dungarees. They don't take underwear or anything like that. Don't do that. But coats and children's coats, very important. Even old shoes that are still in good shape, they'll take them. Okay, with that, I also say, please say a prayer. Prayer does work, no matter what a Democrat might tell you. Prayer works. And with that, I'm going to say thank you. This show is recorded. It's now 12:11 p.m. I will have this show up in about 2 hours. So by 2 o'clock, I should have this show outbound. Live, you could always find it, but it's always being processed. But I will have this show out by 2:30 today at the latest. All right, everyone. Be safe, be good, as I fade to black.